Can you please make sure your cell phones are either off or turned on silent, please? All right. Would you like to introduce Mr. Taylor?
Absolutely. So tonight with us, I'm going to introduce Mr. Taylor, who will provide some information about our presentation this evening. So, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Sonora. So, thank you so much. I've got some fifth graders with me tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about our hovercraft. We had a hovercraft was in just a couple of weeks ago. This is like our 7th year that we've been contracting with this company to come in for the hovercraft presentation, which is a little hiatus, a little bit of a change during the COVID time. But it's our 7th year of doing that, having them come in. It's been fantastic, but I'm not going to just tell you that. I've got some friends who are going to share that. So I want to introduce them, and then we're going to talk in just a couple of minutes. But I also want to thank our teachers. All of our 5th grade teachers are here tonight. Mrs. Hildreth, Mr. Knowlton, and Mr. Alney are here supporting the kids as well. And thank you to our families too for bringing them. Yay! So, all right, we click through here. Thinking about our strategic plan, this day that we spent, lots of times when I get news back from the middle schoolers, it was their best day in Kyler as they were there. And that's one of the things that they reflect about. But it really is about our educational excellence, the amount of work that they put in, and you're going to hear some of that, and the great school experience for them. So we're going to start because yesterday we were working together, all my friends and I, and one of us came up with an acronym to describe the day. So as the kids were looking at and talking about all the things that we did yesterday, or all the things we did during the hovercraft, Skylar came up with the idea of feet. So this was her idea. So we've got Skylar Stevens with us, Cash Dates, Isla Folds, Charlotte Johnson, Jimmy Yates, and Avery Lunkenheimer. So thank you very much. All right, so Skylar, can you tell us about feet, please?
FEET stands for Fun, Educational, Effort, and Teamwork.
All right, nice, Skylar. All right, so Avery is going to tell us a little bit about some of the fun that we had.
Some fun things we did were flying the hovercrafts and working with the engines.
Nice. Thank you, Avery. Cash, you want to talk about the educational aspect of it, bud?
Some educational things are we got to learn about engineering and showing off our creativity.
Nice. All right. Jimmy, how about all the effort you put in?
All the effort we put in was about learning how to make the correct circles because we had to make holes so then the air could come out and working together.
Nice, thank you. Unfortunately, I can't get this video to play right now. It's just a 30-second. It was a race between Jimmy and Cash. You guys remember who won?
Cash.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Oh, thank you. All right, Charlotte.
It was really nice for some teamwork. Sometimes it was frustrating because if you had a really great idea, someone would talk about it and then you would talk about it and then no one would listen to you. But we kept our minds on the same goal and we persevered through it.
Nice. Good job. All right, Isla. Take us home, Isla.
So I think that the lesson of the whole day was that stress comes with great power, and the power is zooming across the gym floor.
Very nice. Great. So thank you so much, guys. You did a great job. This is awesome. It's so much fun. So that's really what we wanted to share with you about our experience. Anything else you want to say? Okay.
Cash, how long were you waiting for this project?
3 years.
3 years. Talk about perseverance.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Did anybody, who got to take home the hovercraft? Isla has
Like
it?
the hovercraft, but we
Yeah.
didn't get to take the actual
Got the
hovercraft,
seat.
but a little it had our team name on it. And we could take it home.
So only you did? Nobody else from the group? They were all split up with all other people?
Any other questions? Listen, it takes a lot of courage to come here and talk in front of us, so thank you very much. Maybe someday you'll be sitting here taking notes like these 12th graders, okay? Mr. Van Orman has something special for you guys for coming tonight, so
All right,
thank you.
Come on up.
If each of the 6 of you would come on up as a token of you persevering through these presentations, we have a Red Creek medallion for each of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
It doesn't go in that book.
It does not go in the book vending machine. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a great opportunity. What a great group of kids. And thank you to the teachers for coming to support the kids. Thank you to the families for helping us.
Yeah, thank you. It's probably the biggest crowd we've had yet this year. All right,
The teachers don't.
we're gonna keep moving.
It's a great day. It's the best day.
You can go whenever you want.
It's a lot of fun if you stay though.
We're gonna move on to Mr. Welcher.
Yeah, written report, no presentation.
Okay. I didn't know if he was here. No? Okay, all right. All right, fantastic. Mr. Van Orman, if you wanted to talk a little bit to the MVPs for this one?
Absolutely. So as we mentioned last month, we were fortunate enough to be able to roll out our MVP program last month, where staff, community staff members can recognize other staff members here that have done outstanding work for various things. Just an opportunity to kind of highlight the day-to-day things and all the good work that some of our staff are doing. This month, we had over 40 nominations for our MVP awards. Each one of the recipients receives a handwritten letter with the reason why they were nominated. And one of the things that was mentioned at the last board meeting was it might be nice to just kind of read some of the submissions. So I have prepared for you a couple that were submitted to us. So one of the names up there is Dave Shirtliff. He's one of our bus drivers. And Dave's recognition letter read that bus driver Dave always makes sure the girls are to school and home safely. He always makes sure that they have everything they need as well, especially their glasses, as they forget them sometimes. Thank goodness for him being so observant. He is so nice and kind. He is the real MVP. Another one is for Kelly Field, a teaching assistant with us. It reads, Kelly is a dedicated employee not only to the school, but to the students. She takes time to get to know every student and encourages them to make the best choices for themselves in a kind and caring way. She is always interacting with students at sporting events and in the hallways with positivity. And I pulled another one of our teachers, Angel Southwick, and it reads, she is absolutely amazing. Kindergarten is such a challenging time, not only for the students, but for the parents. Angel does everything in her power to make everyone feel as comfortable as possible. She is so informative, has had the best communication. She takes time out of her busy life to spend very, very detailed newsletters out every Friday. Oftentimes, my 5-year-old just tells me school was good and gives me no details, so these Friday letters help me to get a conversation started about the school week. There are so many little things she does to go above and beyond, and they certainly do not go unnoticed. Her parents definitely got it right with her name because she is 100% an angel.
Aww. You should end the meeting with this stuff too.
So there's just a small snapshot of the types of feedback that we're getting about the good things that our staff is doing and getting recognized for. It really, obviously you can tell getting a letter like that, a personalized letter like that would certainly uplift somebody's day. So, hats off to everybody that's continuing to submit those recognitions for our deserving staff members.
It's great, thank you. It's hard to follow up like the kids and then that.
Right.
All right, well, let's talk about the minutes. I take a motion for the regular meeting minutes for October 8th, please. Mrs. Decker, and a second by Mrs. Kaiser. Any corrections here, changes, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on.
I'll make a motion to accept the financial reports 1 through 12.
Thank you.
I think it's all of them. 36. Wait, I gotta scroll. There's a lot of them.
There's 15.
Geez, 15.
I would even take it 1 through 12, so I'm very happy with 1 through 15. Thank you, Mrs. Zingman. Could I have a second, please? Thank you, Mrs. Folds. You have a question? Oh, I don't know if you were raising your hand or not. Okay, any questions on this group? Thank you for taking them all together. Mr. Van Orman's trying to overwhelm us, I think.
This catches us up.
Yeah.
You won't see this many next month.
Okay, when you're ready.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Folds?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Could I have a motion for something? Anybody?
I'll make a motion for all of E, 1 through 4.
Okay,
I'll make a second.
thank you. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay. Questions on this group? Are you okay, Amanda?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody? When you're ready.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Folds?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes, thank you. Okay, F, new business.
I'll make a motion F1 through 16.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Kaiser. I think we just psyched these seniors out because this is moving much quicker than I thought. Okay, questions. I will say that there was one removal of a policy that was in that grid on F4 that's not there anymore, so you can ignore that one, obviously. Any questions on this group? When you're ready. Oh,
I was gonna say not a question, but a thank you for all the donations that we got for all the stuff for junior soccer.
Yeah, it's a huge endeavor. So kudos to Mr. Bonanno and the team that have really put, Pam Gallant is really behind the scenes doing a lot of work. Tomorrow's the big day for the junior supper, so it'll be great to see all those donations. Just increases the profitability of that event for our kids. So it's great.
So you take out, so you can pick it up, take it home.
Right, starts at 4 p.m. tomorrow in the high school cafeteria.
Quick plug. All right, any other questions? When you're ready.
Mrs. Folds?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes. Thank you. Administrative reports under G. Any questions?
Very thorough.
So good job. Sorry, we don't have enough coins to hand out. Questions, any other comments? Okay, all right, we'll keep moving. Mr. Van Orman.
Thank you. As I mentioned last month, we started, I gave you folks a year-to-date attendance rates and enrollment rates for all of our grades. That'll be a running tally that'll go throughout the course of the school year. It'll include some ebbs and flows, most likely, but it also is used by internal staff for us to look at trends. So where are we with attendance in certain grade levels? Our MTSS teams look at that information when we start to look at scheduling of classes and programs. We look at those enrollment numbers. So again, dipped a little bit overall. We were up a little bit the first month, down a little bit the second month. It'll ebb and flow over the course of the year, but I think it's important for us to just pay attention to those numbers. before that trend really starts to go in one direction or another. So I wanted to keep that updated for you. The second item, of course, is the budget development calendar. This is something that we will bring to the board next month for action to approve. It's a similar format to what we used last year. We took some information out that was really more internal information and not really information that was necessary for the board to work through. Just some deadlines that we knew we needed to meet legally on some items. So, but this takes us through, now is the time. Just as Tom Zuber talked about in his audit report a few minutes ago, the budget preparation process for the 25-26 school year, which will start in July, rolls over in July. We start that now. We're into that now, looking at our expenses, where we're going with some of our programs, some of our staffing needs. So we internally are starting to work through all of those things now, and then you can see the breakdown as we move through. The plan would be to use a similar format to what we did last year, having Danielle present at various times on different pieces of the budget process as we hit those timeline events. Any questions on this? Perfect. We'll bring it back for action next month.
Okay. If there are no questions, we could take action on it now if feel necessary, or we can have it brought back if needed.
I don't have a question, it's just a comment. It indicates on the 21st that the Board of Education accepts the budget results. While I understand that we've done that for the past few years, it's not statutory. It is if you have multiple polling places, but because we're only one, we are not required to accept budget results. So,
even though we're not required, we have historically brought that action to the
but
board.
this past May, we had very little to bring forward except for the budget results. So if it's not something we're required to do, why are we doing it? Well, what if we all vote no? Are we gonna vote again?
We would not.
Okay.
It's more of an action, an acknowledgement that
An
of where we
acceptance
are.
of-
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kim.
I just wanted clarification on what that question was. I'm not sure if I'm following what you're saying.
The last item on the
Yeah.
list isn't necessary because we only have one polling site. So I think the idea that Mrs. Dingman is bringing up is that we could approve the calendar but remove that last item, or that if we do want to keep it, she was just saying that was the one in question. And we can bring it back. I was just saying if there weren't any questions and we didn't need any further discussion, we could do that now.
So historically, we would vote on the 20th, or not historically, but that's the third Tuesday in May. And then the next day happens to be a board meeting. So I believe what Ms. Dingman is saying is that in order for the budget results to be finalized, it does not require board action.
Did we vote on it last year?
Well, we've done things in the past before that we're not required to do, so the excuse has been, well, that's what we've always done, but it doesn't mean that it's required.
Nancy, is there a reason you don't want to do it?
I'm thinking maybe the idea, I don't mean to jump in on you, but I'm thinking maybe the idea, the fact that it works out this year is that it's right before a board meeting. That doesn't always necessarily have to happen, especially if we've limited the number of board meetings in the past.
Don't we accept the Board of Education results from that election too at the next board meeting?
That's
what
the
we're
same
talking about.
thing. That same meeting? Is that what you're asking? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
but we do have to accept those results.
No. The items that you vote on May 20th are not required to be accepted by the board because we don't have multiple polling places.
Gotcha.
Take a larger school district, they could have 5. So then they have to collect them individually, bring them together, and then that board accepts the results.
Do we want to ask legal what their recommendation is, maybe?
I think this is just a calendar. So, I mean, this is just a guideline for us. If we, and you know what, we don't have to do it tonight. We can bring it back and do it at the next meeting.
Yeah, that puts
original
us right in
plan,
timeline
yeah.
for where we were last year. The board accepted the calendar in December, so we're right in line.
Any other questions on the calendar? Any other dates that stick out or anything? Clarifications? Okay. Mr. Vanderman, did you have anything else, or am I okay to keep going?
I have no other report, nothing else to report.
That was like kind of the end of a court decision.
It is not.
I'm done at this time. Okay.
The defense rests.
Right, exactly. Okay, committee updates. I'm not gonna go through the list. Anybody have anything to update the board with? Yes, ma'am.
So the Wellness Committee is in the middle of something called the LIFT Project, which is about like basically your wellness, like the Wellness Committee should be doing. But like body, mind, health sort of thing. It's like a 7-week program. Every week they give you like different activities to do. I can't tell you the actual activities because I am not participating in the LIFT Project. I kind of wish I was because you could potentially win a Wegmans gift card and a t-shirt, but that's what they're doing.
Thank you. Anyone else?
The PTA did the PTA pumpkin walk with the trunk or treat, and it seemed to have a really good turnout.
Okay.
And finance committee, a few of us met for Danielle to break it down elementary style, so that was super helpful. Yeah, so those are my updates.
Perfect.
Mrs. Dimini has shared some I'm not sure if she's here, I thought I saw her briefly, but she's shared some minutes with me on the most recent meeting for the instructional council. To be completely transparent, I haven't completely looked through them and processed them all yet, so I will share those with everyone soon.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to speak to the advocacy once we get to number 4. Okay, moving on. The Board of Education goals. If I send an email out on Monday that kind of gave what I thought would be some good guidelines, which is basically the same thing from last year that we would try to hit on. We don't have to have that discussion tonight. We can have it separately with the next board meeting if everybody hasn't had a chance to read that email and kind of digest it a little bit. We're obviously a little bit behind schedule on that, so I'd like to get moving if we can, but potentially it would be a rollover from last year on both the Board of Education goals and the district goals. I don't know if anybody had any questions or any thought on that.
Did we finish the committee charters last year? I thought we did. No?
I do not have a copy of.
I feel like some of us started it and then we didn't finish it.
We never finished.
Yeah,
So
so-
I am for keeping the same goals just because I feel like all of them were in the process and we could actually complete them if we keep them.
Okay. Any other thoughts on it? It is something that we could potentially bring back in December to accept if we wanted to do that.
I didn't have time to go through. So if I did, like, what if we take the next month to review everything?
Yep.
And then what if we want to have a conversation? We can do that at the December meeting.
Yeah, so why don't we just do this? Let's just say within the next week, if everybody could take a look at that email. And if you're on board with moving forward with it, then we'll just add it to the agenda for the next meeting. And if there needs to be a discussion, then we can do that as well. In addition to that, in that particular email, I just want to point out that there was the Board of Education handbook. We had talked about the onboarding process. I took the notes from the document that Mrs. Folds had created, some of the comments in there and the questions. tried to clean that up. I did put this in my email, but I'd like to bring attention to the fact that I did remove the section about the specific committees. That's the only thing that I took out, leaving in the audit committee, taking everything else out with a note simply to say that because we actually are the first board in a while that have made some adjustments to the committees, that you would look to see those specific charters for those committees for each year. Now, they can easily be included in the handbook, but those committees' charters are not completed yet, so I didn't have those to work from. I did make a note in there as well that, Stephanie, Mrs. Kaiser and I had discussed that this could be a living document, so we could make changes and make adjustments to it, but it was one piece of the onboarding process that we had discussed last year, and I think it would be helpful. This is also something that you could review and we could take a look at for December. There's one other item in that email that's titled, I think, meeting schedule that we discussed. And Mrs. Kaiser and I just basically pulled up some of the important items that we needed to be hitting on through the calendar year, completely focused on the Board of Education. That's the wrong one I sent you, it's the next email. Sometimes I send the wrong things attached to. So for example, the February date would be the date, the February meeting date would be the date when the committee charters would need to be completed. Therefore, when they were completed and accepted, we would be able to add them to that Board of Education handbook, and they would then also become part of the onboarding process. Obviously, to keep those charters if the committees remained, keep them on file if the committees were dissolved and new committees were formed, then we would also follow that same path. Also on that calendar, we just broke out some of the other dates. If you don't mind, thank you. Dates related to the evaluation, related to possible conversations about a retreat over the summer, superintendent goals, board goals, district goals, things like that. Our thought was simply if we kept this in addition to our general meeting schedule, that would give us an opportunity to stay on task. For example, our December meeting should be a meeting where we're preparing the half-year evaluation for the superintendent, which it's already here. It seems like we just started this year. So again, something to review and take a look at. If you wanted to make notes on it or changes or had thoughts, we could also do that. Send it back to me, or we could put it up just for discussion at the next meeting. Okay? Okay.
Can I add something, Kate?
Yes, please.
I replied to this email with a resource that I got at the convention with another handbook that is really, really well put together.
Oh, I didn't see it yet. I'm sorry.
That's because I sent it after I got here.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
well, that makes me feel a little better.
The link, it's a legit link, and it's to another handbook.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so we'll, like I said, open for discussion. I just wanted to kind of get the ball rolling, and we had a chance to discuss it and kind of put our thoughts to paper, so that's where we are with that. Okay, we're gonna move on. Number 3, community center bylaws discussion. So in your packet, there's a letter that I received from Mr. Van Orstren, who is the president of the community center board. Has everybody had a chance to kind of glance over that? There's also the bylaws attached to that letter with questions. If you took a look at the letter, it obviously is asking for this to be brought before the Board of Education, so I thought this was probably the easiest way to do this. And I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Van Orman just for a minute, because I think this kind of started at the policy committee level, and so he can kind of walk us through the timeline.
Yeah, certainly. I'll try to give you a brief rundown of where we started from and to what's in front of you. So back in July, at one of our policy committee meetings, the 3 members and myself, Ms. Allen brought to the committee some information that the Community Center Advisory Board and a subcommittee had been working through some recommended changes to their bylaws, and specifically how it related to policy 3170, which is the policy in our policy manual that relates to the community center governance. both in person and then back and forth through email, it was determined that before those changes would be recommended going forward, I was going to connect with our legal counsel to seek some input on if those changes that they were recommending were appropriate to be made. So for instance, some of the proposed changes were to go from 9-member board, advisory board down to 7, to remove some of the representation from each of the towns and the villages, and also to remove the residency requirement to serve on the advisory board. The current policy that we have in front of us right now shows a last review date of 2017. As most people are aware, the community center was formed in 2000, 2001 is when it opened. So, what exists between 2000 and 2017 in terms of governance and guidance. So I reached out to legal counsel. The legal counsel responded back that in order to change some of the bylaws, we should review or look into reviewing if there were any intermunicipal agreements that existed between the school district and the towns and villages that were represented on the advisory board. Oftentimes, the partnerships that are used to form that community center come with some sort of written agreements. So, we would need to get our hands on and review those. Taking that information, the lawyer, the legal counsel said they can look into that. They can search those intermunicipal agreements. They can review our bylaw change recommendations, but it would come at an expense. Every time we call a lawyer, there's an expense to that. So she was transparent and said, if you want us to do that, there will be an expense with that. At that point, I asked them to pause so that I could get further direction. I reached out to Dave Welcher and to Gary Van Ostrand first back in August to say, hey, this is where we stand. This is what had been given to me. The policy, the recommended changes. Here's what our legal counsel was advising. Please let me know where the Community Center Advisory Board lands on this. At that point, it was my recommendation that if somebody was going to move forward with legal review of the bylaws, that the district would not cover the costs of that review, because the district didn't ask for a review of the bylaws. So the community center itself would have to manage the bill on that. I recommended that Gary and Dave bring it back to the advisory board as a whole to get further discussion. In early September, I followed up with Mr. Welcher, Gary, Ms. Allen, and our board president, Ms. Madigan, to pass along that same information that I had shared with Mr. Welcher and the advisory board president in late August. A few days later, I received an email from Ms. Allen asking to meet prior to the advisory board committee meeting on September 19th for some clarification on what things could change, where they stood, what those steps looked like. Middle of September, I was able to meet in person with Mr. Welcher and Mr. Van Ostrand to follow up on some of those questions. I again stressed that Article 2 within the bylaws, specific to the advisory board, would require council to review. If they had other changes to the rest of their bylaws, we would certainly be able to take a look at those and possibly bring those to the Board of Education. Early October, I received an email from the advisory board president, Gary Van Ostrand, asking if I would meet with the subcommittee that has been at reviewing the bylaws and making the recommendation changes. My response to Gary was that he should work through the chain of command, which is Mr. Welcher as the community center director, or as per our policy, the advisory board reports directly to the Board of Education. And then just last week, we received what you have in front of you. So again, kind of in summation, we're looking at some proposed bylaws changes. Those are the same changes that I reviewed with legal counsel, who said in order for us to move forward with them, they would have to do a further review to make sure that we could do those. And I guess we're just kind of looking for some direction on if we're going to move forward with those, where the financial support is going to come from to do that work, based on where we stand right now.
Okay, so that's why it's in front of us as a group. Obviously, Kim is the liaison on this committee, but you know, I thought it was best to have a discussion and try to make sure that we all understand what's going on, and also the financial situation that we would be in if we were going to pay our attorneys to clean up this language. So, questions, comments? Yes.
I think you said it, but I don't remember what the number was. What's the number for them to clean it up?
We didn't get that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know.
right.
Okay.
They bill by the hour and the email.
And their task would be to reach out to each of the municipalities included in the bylaws?
So that would maybe be part of it, right? And then to review the recommendations, not only to review the intermunicipal agreements, but then also to review the recommendations from the subcommittee as well.
I think, and I don't want to overstep here, but I think the idea behind this was that our school attorney was under the assumption that the Board of Education had asked for the bylaws to be reviewed. They were being reviewed, and then that cost would bounce back up to this board. Obviously, I would assume that there wasn't a plan for the community center to pay for the bylaws to be changed. But I'm not on that committee, so I don't want to say that for sure.
So I'm confused, why, so Kim is our liaison to the community center, and you had a communication with the group indicating that if you wanted to move forward, it would be an expense to the community center. So why would, and if you're our liaison, why would you be asking for a meeting with the superintendent as a liaison? Why not direct them to say, if you have questions, you need to follow what the chain is? Because that's how we left it with the policy committee, is that Mr. Van Orman was going to move forward with the attorney, and I guess you received word back.
There was a lot of back and forth communication on this subject matter since June, so the meetings that were requested were for clarification with the communication that was coming from, I guess, from council at that point.
So why not just bring that, since you are the liaison, why not bring that back to Kate? Why are you involving the superintendent? Because the superintendent's not even involved with the bylaws. The policy states that it's with the board and the advisory board.
Because it wasn't even ready to go to board level at that point. The only reason why it got brought to the board level at the policy committee is because the policy that's referenced in the bylaws does not match what's in the bylaws. So the committee stopped at that point and said, well, wait a minute, we can't move forward until we know, like, what comes first, the cart before the horse? Does the Board of Education policy get updated first and then the bylaws follow, or vice versa? So the committee that was working on the bylaw edits were at a stalemate at that point.
Why did the bylaws even begin to have a revision?
There was a member of the community center that came forward asking for membership, which would be section 8D. Page 6, 8D. Asked for a family member or a minor to be included in the membership. So at that point in time, again, the advisory board committee kind of stopped and said, well, does it make sense to look at the bylaws as a whole instead of just honing in on one particular section of the bylaws? The entire bylaws hadn't been updated since 2015. So the consensus was, yes, let's take a look at everything all together. So we started from scratch at that point.
Can I ask a question associated with that, Dee? Is that something, I don't know which direction I'll look, but is that something that can be decided by the advisory board of the community center? Or that would have been?
That comes from the direction of the board.
Well, I'm just wondering, could that have been attacked on its own? Or would that have needed this 13, the age limit? I don't know if limit's a good word. The one that is talking about the age of. Is that something, or I guess what I'm wondering is the legal counsel piece of it attached to Article 2 only, the makeup?
That is my understanding.
So is it possible that, let's say that you did not go through everything, that that particular item could have been changed and brought to the Board of Education, asking for our approval for that? Would it have worked individually like that?
Well, I would think just because if you're making a change to the bylaws, that's something that has to go through the attorney.
For any of them, not just advisory, or not just Article 2?
Where in the bylaws does it say it has to go through the attorney?
Well, how were the bylaws formed?
I don't have the answer to that, right? So that happened in 2001 or whenever the community center was built. So probably the original ones had to go through council.
Right, so any changes, though, to other bylaws are typically voted by the boards, but the community center isn't the one who is drafting them.
But the community center has its own board, like its own separate board from us.
I think there actually isn't a difference though, yeah, as an advisory board and the Board of Education, because that was my question too.
Because I think either way with that membership question, it would have come to us for approval at some point, for it to get approved by us or by council or whoever has to approve that change, I think.
Yeah,
But-
we're legally responsible for it.
But either way, like right now, we're not following the bylaws that we have put out, is my understanding. Like, how many people are on the committee right now? Is it 9?
No. it's
Is there
six.
is there one from every
But there's-
municipality listed?
9, it's just not filled then.
Right, but do we have somebody representing each municipality that we have listed?
I'm not even sure if they're, advertising to say, hey, we have an opening. Is anybody interested in that township?
I don't know the answer to that question either. I just, from what I remember in the policy meeting, the reason the policy had to be updated was because we weren't actively following the bylaws. So they needed updating.
Correct.
So because you couldn't find anyone to fill those positions?
Nope. So the positions have become vacant over the past 3 months or so.
Okay. Okay. So why wouldn't you just find someone to fill them? Would be, I guess is my
The
question.
board decided to hold until we knew what was going on with this, because if the number was going to change.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that members can't be found. It was that there aren't any and you're trying to change the number.
Correct. But I would say the majority of these 8 pages are not being, there's a lot of bylaw, a lot of the content of bylaws are not being followed today. So that's why the proposal was to add it to what is happening today, or how the board recommends that the bylaws be followed.
But just because they're not being followed, it doesn't mean that they should be followed.
But the advisory board isn't responsible for getting the members in, because according to the bylaws that are currently standing, it says the members will be appointed by each of the following governing bodies, and then it lists the 7 governing bodies that should be appointing members. So if they're not upholding their end of what they're supposed to be doing, that's not on the advisory board at the community center to go out and chase people down.
And it's to my understanding that the governing bodies have not appointed members in quite some time. Like, that has just not been.
Yeah, but on the other side of that, do you think that it would be fair to change the rules every time we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing? I mean, that doesn't seem that doesn't seem like it would make sense to me. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I'm not sure I would agree that the idea is to change the rule. My thought would be that we need to tell the municipalities to, but that would be a function of the advisory board, not change the
The
bylaws.
advisory board feels like having governing bodies control who are members of the advisory board is not necessary. It was a part of the regulations or the bylaws or the expectations when the community center was built because of maybe some language around that at that time. Because it was a community center and there needed to be written into the bylaws language about the governing bodies. But today, 23 years later or whatever, is that still applicable? Like, is that still necessary to have those regulations as part of the bylaws? Or are there 7 people or 9 people who actively want to serve on the advisory board regardless of what town they live in or what, there's 4 people from Fairhaven, would that exclude because of their desire to serve on the board?
I understand your point. I think from our standing, whatever the decision is made, it's the financial piece that we need to consider. Is this a priority for the Board of Education to pay for council to review these bylaws and set them straight? Or change them if necessary, look into this. I have a feeling this is going, we do not have a number, but I have a feeling that this would be relatively expensive considering there's several municipalities to reach out to. There would have to be homework for this. And because it's not just one item either, obviously they would be reviewing the entire thing. So,
I'm comfortable going forward with saying leave everything as is for now and not moving forward with any expenses. I'm not, certainly not taking the advice of to review without legal consultation, especially after he received a letter indicating that the attorney said that she would have to be involved, that they would have to be involved.
Was it that they have to be involved in general, or they just have to be involved in the membership portion?
No, it's the changing of the bylaws as a whole.
I was asking Mr. Van Orman what they said.
The focus of my conversation with her was around the advisory board's Article 2.
Okay. Did you ask at all about, like, specifically that minor that was trying to get membership?
I did not.
Okay.
other thoughts?
I think this needs more conversation. I don't think it's something, I mean, especially if we don't even know what we're looking at in terms of money. And I would also agree to the fact that I don't think we should be moving forward with anything without legal counsel.
Can I ask, and I don't know if this is a Kim Allen question or a Dave Vulture question, has anyone reached out to municipalities to remind them that they are tasked with assigning somebody every 3 years to the role? Like, do they know that they're supposed to do that?
I have not. So up until probably about 3 months ago, we had that board full with all the municipalities and a couple of at-large seats.
Okay.
And as we lost a couple of people and as this discussion kept going, that's why we paused, the advisory board and myself paused on reaching out to anybody about it. But in the past, the board was full as it is in Article 2.
Okay.
That kind of told me where we are right now.
Thank you.
So there's no motion on the floor, but we're going to go with a majority of how to move forward with this. So if everybody could kind of weigh in, I would appreciate it.
Do you want me to repeat what I said?
No, but you're down for a stay the same. Mr. Joyce, how about you?
I'm done. I think we need more information. I'd like to keep it as is for now.
Keep it as is. Okay. Mrs. Decker?
I think if we're not following the bylaws, we should look at either making ourselves in compliance or updating them to something that we can comply with. And if what they were originally looking at for that exception, I think that could be a valid exception that we should be making for students if it's, or for community members if it's like on a case-by-case basis, or if
I
it's
completely
important.
disagree with that.
Okay.
I would agree, I don't have enough information, but I think considering the community center doesn't really make us money, we shouldn't be spending a ton of money on it. I would need more information before I would want to move forward with any sort of large task and cost.
Mr. Vanderman, how often are bylaws typically updated? Like, is 10 years the normal amount of time for them to not be updated?
I'm not familiar. I had no experience updating bylaws in this role.
Okay. Mrs. Allen, I assume I know where you are on this, but would you like to add anything?
No, I guess not this time.
Okay. Then I'm going to say that we're going to hold off on this, and I would say after this discussion that I would charge the superintendent with asking the community center director to help the advisory board move forward with the bylaws as they stand, to make sure that we're following them to the best of our ability.
Sorry, so if we don't have enough information, then where does that leave us then? If several people say they don't have enough information.
If I'm misunderstanding this, I'm think that we're not going to pay to move forward to change them. Is that, but maybe I misunderstand the leave them as is. Would anyone prefer to get a dollar amount?
I would like to know how often they should actually be being updated. Like, if 10 years, 20 years, 30, like what is a reasonable number of years before we come back and look at them again?
Okay, so that's a separate question. Does anyone want to know how much money this would cost in order to do it? Or we're not going to visit this at this time because we want to make sure we clarify this, because that's a good point.
I would be curious to know how much, like if it's $500 or $1,000.
I have a weird feeling it might be more than that, but you never know. You never know. Maybe it's a little pro bono going on, Mr. Joyce.
Yeah, I think it's
It's not pro bono.
definitely not. Yeah. No, I just think the cost is going to be.
Not at this time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be at this time.
Nancy, no. Stephanie.
No, not without way more, I mean, I agree, I don't think we should change the laws because we're not following them, we should figure out how to follow them. Like, figure out how to make this work. Like, I guess I don't understand what our, like, if we move forward and we have the little council take this and cost us thousands of dollars, what are we gaining? I don't have enough information to know what we're gaining.
I think it's a compliance situation, from what I understand. If that's you're asking, that committee is asking to change to be in compliance with what's going on now.
I think we should try to figure out how to get in compliance before we change what would make us in compliance.
No, Mr. Welcher just said that. We were in compliance just a few months ago.
Right, so maybe we reach out, or not we, but maybe the advisory board reaches out to municipalities and.
It's not the advisory board's role to do that though. So I think it's probably a bigger conversation that, like you said, we need more information because there's a lot in here. There's a lot that's not happening now. It's not as simple as like, well, just do what the bylaws say.
So the only thing is, I would say to that is I think that it's fair to give the advisory board of the community center some sort of something to take back or deliver back, because I think it's unfair to make that committee or any subcommittee continue to go over this if they're not going to have any action on it. So I think that's why it's important that we decide how we're going to move forward, because if we don't, that's just not fair to people. If you're taking the time to dissect these and break them apart and see if you can make changes that would, affect that group, then we have to figure out how we're going to handle that, because if there's no one to pay the attorney's fees for that, then what do we do from there? Does that make sense?
So So like right now, the duties of the board doesn't match what the policy says, right? That's where we started back in the summertime.
Which one are you on?
Number 3. So it's like, there's a lot in here. It's not just membership, it's not just the governing bodies.
So this, you're saying that number 3, the duties of the board does not match the Board of Education policy?
That's correct. And the advisory board does not do the duties that are listed there. Like, we don't, the advisory board does not define the fiscal year. The advisory board does not, hire the program director, set the membership, So there's just things in here that, again, it might have been appropriate at the time that these bylaws were created or last revised, but today that's not the duties that are expected of the advisory board. So we're trying to right fit it to what is happening now.
So is the only one that's different is the define the fiscal year? That's crossed out?
I think some language was changed as far as like assisting. So instead of the duty being the advisory board, assisting the program director with certain things as requested, or what requested. Number 8, we can recommend just some minor changes to the language to make it appropriate for how the board is functioning. And there's other sections that are like that. I just point out the duties because the policy number relates to that. That the board policy, the majority of that board policy is about, the whole middle paragraph is about the duties of the board. Those 2 things aren't driving. So that's why it went to policy committee.
So do we approve that policy?
We do not.
There's a policy, but.
The Board of Education policy, we approved 3170.
No.
Not since 2017.
Okay. Is that up for review?
Yes.
Okay.
It says in board docs, we reviewed it in October 30th of 24.
Yeah, it does say that, but it
But I don't think
Yeah.
it was a couple places.
Well, and it was placed on hold, right?
So it was originally on the list for October, and now it's on based on.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Mrs. Foltz?
I would agree, if we're gonna just have a hard stop, I would prefer to stop that rather than push forward and have them, going through this and I also think we should look at policy, to your point, like what's our policy, can we right size it in terms of what's currently happening?
Okay, so I wonder if, after pointing out the duties of the board for 3170, maybe the best next conversation is after that policy is reviewed and brought up, we can have that discussion then of what is not driving and what needs to be corrected, because obviously we're going to need legal counsel either way to make those changes. Is that something that we could get on board with? Is that up for review soon? Is that like your next group, or?
Well, we just put it on hold last week, so we were doing.
What I mean is, can you lump that into your next
Yes.
group? Okay. Okay.
Or the group after, like within the next couple of months.
Okay, that sounds great. Any other comments on that? Okay, the last thing I have is the NISBA conference. Anyone who attended, is going to work into advocacy. Anybody that attended wrote up some quick notes and thoughts on the sessions that they attended in New York City a couple weeks ago, and those were distributed to everyone. Thank you, Amanda, for printing those off. So if you have a chance, take a look at them. Because somebody really wants to write and ask her to do that, but I'm sure that she can. That's a great idea. Maybe Amanda, if you get a second. Thank you. We're done with paper. So anyway, everybody, all the sessions, we tried to, divide up and conquer some bigger topics that we all liked. I went to one on schools with no cell phones allowed in them. I'm sure all of you would be in a huge agreement with that. Students were like, not till next year. Just kidding, I just listened. Anyway, so any questions or anything, reach out to the person, their names are at the top, or they're supposed to be except for Elizabeth. But you can reach out and ask any questions, or if you come up with some good ideas. I always say that our first conversation on one-to-one devices at the school happened at an NSBA conference with myself and another board member and superintendent. So you never know what kind of good ideas you can get out of stuff. So, like I said.
International student program.
Oh, yeah, yes, our international student program, which someone should tell our 12th grader international students they have to attend this too, so. Any questions on that?
So everybody turned one in?
Yes.
What? So this one is,
Elizabeth is the yellow.
No.
No?
Second to the last one.
Okay, I'm sorry. Elizabeth is not the yellow. You know what,
second to last it says Kim.
when you load them up, would you put the names above the groups so then people can reference them? Thank you.
This one.
All right. Any other questions for Tony? Okay, I would take a motion to move into executive for a negotiation matter, please. Thank you, Mrs. Kaiser, and second by Mrs. Foltz. Thank you, guys.